Well, good evening to you. Thank you for making time for us tonight on K24 Evening Edition. We begin the bulletin by having a look at what is shaping news tonight.
Kwa nini mtoto wangu aliuliwa? Na nijue kosa gani alifanya akauliwa. Na huyo polisi alimuua, nataka nione tu na macho, nimuulize tu swali moja. Tu peke yake ndio nataka
Mimi mtoto wangu alipokufa hakupatikana na bullet. Walikuwa already wameshatoa. Kwa hivyo mimi sina imani na wao kabisa.
Families of Kenyans who lost their lives during the anti-government protests decry delays in investigations and bring to book of police involved in the killings. Kenya confirms the first case of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox, at the Taita Taveta one-stop border post traveling from Uganda to Rwanda through Kenya. Court of Appeal declares the Finance Act 2023 unconstitutional, citing violation of constitutional procedures and existing laws in its enactment. Plus, vetting of newly nominated cabinet secretaries set to commence tomorrow, with Interior CS nominee Professor Kithure Kindiki being the first to be vetted. Well, K24 Evening Edition begins right now. I'm Alan Owino. Our sign language interpreter for this session is Evelyn Wangoi. Families of persons who lost their lives during the recent anti-government protests are now calling on the government through the concerned departments to carry out quick investigations and determine who killed their loved ones. Speaking at IPOA offices, a section of them have explained their pain after their children were shot by police officers while exercising their democratic right to demonstrate. They also want to be fully involved in the process, citing lack of transparency from the police. Here is Majibu Kisao with more.
Families of those who lost their lives during the Gen Z protests are overwhelmed with grief over their loved ones. They arrived here carrying their photos not only as memories of the departed, but also as a symbol of their cry for justice to the government.
Nilimuona kama amelalishwa chini na amefunikwa, amewekelewa bendera, na sio kitu kingine ilikuwa ni nini.
Kennedy alishutiwa on his way kwenda kuboro kitabu kwa rafiki yake. Hapo ndiye alishutiwa.
Sasa mimi naomba serikali anaambie tu huyo polisi alisuit kijana wangu kwa nini alimusuit. Ama wataki vijana wasome, ataki vijana akae Kenya. Tukae tukijua tukizaa tunaua vijana isikae Kenya.
Phoebe Akumu, mother of 16-year-old Kelvin Odhiambo, who was shot by suspected police officers, is filled with sorrow as she recounts her son's death.
Hata alikuwa afanye class form 4 saa hii. Amewacha na kifunga shule au anampeleka afanye college ya wiring. Anakuwa mtu wa kutengeneza stima, kuweka kwa nyumba, na sasa amewacha hizo vitu. Juu because of Ruto analeta polisi. Mimi hiyo tu ndio naweza sema serikali, hata wale watu wa IPOA bila wameshika hii maneno, washike kabisa tujue kwa nini mtoto wangu aliuliwa. Na nijue kosa gani alifanya akauliwa. Na huyo polisi alimuua, nataka nione tu na macho, nimuulize tu swali moja. Tu peke yake ndio nataka kujua.
Despite raising their voices, their hopes of obtaining justice are fading further due to what they claim is lack of transparency from the authorities.
Serikali, mimi sina amani na polisi kitu ya kwanza. Hata kama wanafuatilia ushahidi, sina imani na wao sababu mimi mtoto wangu alipokufa hakupatikana na bullet. Walikuwa already wameshatoa. Kwa hivyo mimi sina imani na wao kabisa.
The police have been heavily blamed for the casualties during the protests, with human rights organizations accusing them of excessive use of force.
Of these cases, we are saying the police cannot investigate the police. The police are accused in this matter. And that is why we have come here today to IPOA, a civilian oversight authority.
The families are now pressing for a swift investigation to identify those responsible for the atrocities. Majibu Kisao for K24 TV, Nairobi.
Nairobi Police Commander Adamson Bungei and 8 other National Police Service officers have been summoned by the Independent Police Oversight Authority and recorded statements of a questionable police conduct during recent nationwide protests. IPOA and civil society organizations are at odds over the reliance on witness testimonies in prosecuting rogue police officers. While civil society groups express confidence in IPOA's ability to pursue prosecutions, they have hinted at the possibility of private prosecutions to seek justice for victims of police brutality if necessary. David Kagina tells us more.
Out of the over 50 deaths and 300 injuries resulting from the anti-government protests, IPOA is investigating 41 deaths and 199 injuries. 3 of the 4 cases forwarded to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions have been returned. IPOA insists that these cases should be resubmitted by the end of the week with the requested information addressed. They maintain they have strong evidence to hold those responsible for the killings accountable. However, IPOA has emphasized that the lack of witnesses is hindering their efforts to prosecute criminal charges against rogue police officers whose actions led to the deaths and injuries.
Actually, you would rather have witnesses and lack ballistics and forensics. Those two just come to reinforce what the witnesses have said. Witnesses are very critical in the strength of any prosecution.
There have also been instances where police officers wielding weapons have been seen concealing their identities by covering their faces, hiding their names and badges. In some cases, their vehicles were unmarked, begging the question on how they would be prosecuted if witnesses cannot identify them.
We know internationally that crimes perpetrated by the officers and who are under command of somebody else in other jurisdictions, the people who gave orders were actually found culpable, and that is the direction Kenya should take. So we are convinced that there is sufficient evidence to take some of these officers to court, even immediately.
It is on these grounds that Nairobi Police Commander Adamson Bungei and 8 other National Police Service officers recorded statements with IPOA to provide insights into the questionable police conduct.
It can only go to command responsibility in the event that we were not able or will not be able to zero in into that particular officer.
Civil society groups, while expressing confidence in IPOA's ability to pursue prosecutions, have hinted at the possibility of resorting to private prosecutions to seek justice for victims of police brutality if necessary.
But if we see things not going our way, we can go and institute private prosecution of these individuals.
David Kagina, K24, Nairobi.
Elsewhere, Kenya has confirmed the first case of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox. Patient 0 was identified at the Taita Taveta one-stop border post, traveling from Uganda to Rwanda through Kenya. Kenyans have now been advised to adhere to public health measures such as regular sanitizing or washing of hands with soap, avoiding close contact with persons, and immediately presenting themselves to the nearest facility if symptoms arise. And as Ari Chimeana reports, the symptoms to watch out for include skin rash or mucosal lesions, fever, headache, aches, and swollen lymph nodes.
Kenya is now at the verge of experiencing a new outbreak following the report of a first case of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox. Through a statement issued by the Ministry of Health, one person who was traveling from Uganda to Rwanda through Kenya has been found with the disease at the Taita Taveta one-stop border. The illness, caused by a monkeypox virus, is transmitted through direct contact with infectious skin or other lesions such as in the mouth or on the genitals. It can also be transmitted through respiratory droplets. Symptoms that occur include skin rash or mucosal lesions, fever, headache, generalized aches, and swollen lymph nodes. Kenyans have now been advised to adhere to public health measures such as the regular sanitizing or washing of hands with soap, avoiding close contact with persons, and presenting themselves to the nearest health facility upon experiencing the symptoms. The Ministry of Health has, however, vowed to contain and prevent the outbreak of the illness through surveillance, reporting cases, and sensitizing the public. The Mpox illness has recently been rampant in East, Central and West Africa, with the highest peak reported last year between the period of June to November. The illness usually resolves in 2 to 3 weeks without complications. In the event of complications, the patients receive specialized treatment. Harriet Chimea, K24.
In a series of legal blows that have hit Kenya Kwanza's administration, the Court of Appeal has delivered another ruling today declaring the Finance Act 2023 unconstitutional. A 3-judge bench upheld an earlier ruling by the High Court that had suspended the implementation of the Act on similar grounds last year, citing violation of constitutional procedures and existing laws in its enactment. The ruling essentially leaves President William Ruto's administration with no taxation law after Kenyans rejected the Finance Bill 2024, with the fate of the now nullified Act remaining in limbo. Timothy Simo with that report.
They say when it rains, it pours. And perhaps President William Ruto's administration can know this better. Before the dust settles on the rejected Finance Bill 2024 that occasioned anti-government protests, the Court of Appeal has yet again delivered another blow on taxation law. A 3-judge bench has upheld a High Court ruling last year that declared the Finance Act 2023 in its entirety unconstitutional. The appellants in the case, Speaker to the National Assembly and the National Assembly, had moved to the Court of Appeal seeking to overturn a High Court ruling that declared the Act null and void. Housing levy, which has since taken effect, was among the prominent controversial clauses that saw a group of individuals, civil society members and political parties, including Azimio Coalition, move to court. The matter of the housing levy being unconstitutional has, however, been overtaken by events following the enactment of the Affordable Housing Act 2024. The doubling of VAT on petroleum levy by 16% from 8% also featured prominently in the opposition against the act and still made part of the demands by Gen Z, who forced the government to entirely drop the Finance Bill 2024. The court further held that the enactment of the Finance Act 2023 violated Articles 220 and 221 of the Constitution, which prescribed the budget-making process, and found the ensuing Finance Act 2023 deeply flawed in procedure. Additionally, the Income Tax, VAT, Excise Duty Act, Levies Act, Kenya Revenue Act, among others, were declared by the court as unconstitutional, having not been subjected to public participation. However, prayers seeking to refund taxes collected under the disputed clauses of the Act were dismissed by the Court of Appeal. For now, Kenyans are left pondering on the implications of the ruling, with many of the clauses already implemented. Timothy Simo, K24 TV.
All eyes will tomorrow be on Parliament's vetting committee set to embark on a rigorous 4-day examination of President William Ruto's cabinet secretary nominees. This comes even as pressure mounts on the committee to reject some nominees, particularly those who are in the previous cabinet, amid allegations of incompetence. Bentura Kwamboka tells us more.
Today marks the lapse of submissions of public opinions on President Ruto's recent cabinet nominees. And now all eyes will be on the 20-member committee of Parliament come tomorrow to see whether it will reject some nominees deemed incompetent by the public, especially those recycled from the previous cabinet. The vetting process is commencing in the shadows of an aggressive accountability push from both political leaders and wananchi, with some opposed to the nominations of opposition members into the cabinet.
We should not be in bed with the government, because the government must do their own specific duty of delivering all the services they promise to Kenyans. So I'm not in support of that. And if you see the kind of leaders who rushed to go there, they have no ambition, they have no vision, they have no mission.
Article 152 says, once dismissed as a state officer, you cannot be reappointed. Ye mwenyewe alitumia mdomo yake akiwa pale across the road, akasema I have dismissed, and then he went ahead and gazetted the dismissal. That alone is a reason as to why we are saying that whole process is a farce. He's wasting our time. Sometimes you wonder whether Badu was right, but now you wonder what it means, because he's also there when he says give them the skunk, and now he has already jumped into the skunk. I don't know how we will refer to him, but it is horrible what we are seeing. So the vetting, we hope the Gen Z will do their work. We are relying on Gen Z to do their vetting, not Bunge.
Already, over 15 petitions and memorandums have been filed to challenge their suitability to hold the CS officers, setting the stage for a tough and rigorous vetting process. The committee, which will include the Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah and Suna East Member of Parliament Janet Mohammed, will be tested on whether it will uphold transparency and accountability, even as religious leaders call for a strikeout of nominees with integrity issues.
We as a church are concerned that all Kenyans should re-examine the issue of integrity. And that must be the key also for our parliamentarians in passing the nominees, in examining whether they are fit for an office. That must be a major consideration.
The vetting schedule begins with Interior Cabinet Secretary nominee Kithure Kindiki at 8 a.m. tomorrow, followed by Deborah Mlongo, Health nominee, at 10 a.m., Alice Wahome, Lands, at 12 p.m., Migos Ogamba, Education, at 3 p.m., and Soipan Tuya, Defense nominee, at 5 p.m. The process will see at least 5 Cabinet Secretaries vetted each day through Sunday. On Friday, the committee will vet the nominee in the Ministry of ICT, Margaret Ndungu, Agriculture's Andrew Muhia, Water nominee Eric Muga, and notable figures Eden Duale for Environment and Davis Chirchir for the Transport docket. The vetting will continue on Saturday with nominees John Mbadi for Treasury, Salim Vuria for Trade, Rebecca Miano for Tourism, Opio Wandai for Energy, Kipchumba Murkomen for Sports. On Sunday, mining nominee Hassan Joho will kickstart the process, Alfred Mutua for Labour, Wycliffe Oparanya for MSMEs, Justin Muturi for Public Service, and Stella Soy for the Gender docket. After the vetting process, the committee will compile a report on each of the nominees, a report which will then be tabled in the House for debate. Parliament will have 28 days to dispense the matter, and approve or disapprove the nominees will be forwarded to the President for appointment. Ventura Kwamboka, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Furahia na Star Times. Enjoy our amazing channels with the best dramas and telenovelas daily. Discover your love language. Will you marry me? Words of affirmation.
I'm sure I like you. Because you're